Welcome back to On Texas Football. I'm Jeff Howe, joined by Jerry Hamilton, Bobby Burton, and Rod Babers. The 2026 football schedule is finalized. We're going to break it down here on this edition of On Texas Football. This edition is brought to you by our friends over at Von Lane. We'll tell you more about Von Lane here in a little bit. Jerry, since you're at the top of the screen, I'll start with you, and we'll go around the horn. Your initial thoughts on the finalized schedule that was revealed Thursday night.
Well, I have two thoughts. My first thought is actually before the SEC schedule. Texas State, Ohio State, UTSA. Just Texas State and UTSA being better teams than San Jose State, UTEP, and Sam Houston State, I think better prepares you for this schedule, right? I like playing a little bit tougher G5s out of the gate to help prepare you for this schedule. I don't think San Jose State, UTEP, and Sam Houston State helped prepare you last year. I like this a little better before you get to SEC play. Then that first SEC game, obviously it's 4 games for the off week at Tennessee. That's going to be a Manning Love Fest game is what that's going to be. The whole Manning family will be there if they can be. Then Ole Miss on the 24th, the entire Manning family will be there if they can be. There's, as we predicted, the Manning Love Fest would be there. Obviously, Texas plays a tougher schedule than last year because it's a 9-game SEC schedule. So you place a G5 with an SEC team. I think the other thing is that jumps out initially at me is there's 4 teams with new head coaches, which most SEC teams are going to have 3 or 4 games against teams with new head coaches. So it's going to be easier to talk about a lot of this stuff in depth more after the portal because there are some unknowns here because there's so much coaching turnover in the SEC this year.
Bobby, your thoughts, and I will piggyback off Jerry a little bit. That game at Tennessee when Texas went to the SEC, a trip to Knoxville is one of those that I had kind of circled on my calendars. Man, that will be a fun trip, and it's going to open conference play in 26.
It will open conference play just like Texas opened conference play in 25 in Gainesville, right? After a trio of non-conference opponents. My first initial take, though, is really kind of simple. 9-game SEC schedule as opposed to 8. Texas went 9-3, 6-2 in conference. It would be nice to take one of these SEC teams off this list and replace it with the San Jose State, right? To get that automatic win somewhere in there. Going to 9 SEC games is a big deal. And I think that as we looked on the outside looking in at the college football playoff this year with the 9-3 record, Kirby Smart has been talking about it. It's 8 more losses for SEC teams as we look at college football in 2026. It could play a role in who makes the college football playoff, not just at Texas, but across the SEC. So that my initial thought is this is what a 9-game SEC schedule looks like.
Rod, you mentioned before we started rolling, you astutely pointed out, Texas had that gap 42 days between home games this year. That is not the case because that trip to Tennessee, as you pointed out, that is the only time through the first 8 games of the season that Texas will actually have to leave the state to play a football game.
I mean, that's a favorable stretch, right? There's nothing easy about these SEC schedules, as Bobby just pointed out, but you want at least some favorable stretches or a favorable bye week or something like that. So at least you have a favorable stretch where you don't have to leave the state, but one time through the first part of that schedule. But I don't necessarily like where the bye week is. Right after that Tennessee game, wish you could have it maybe a little bit later in the season or maybe kind of the midway point of the season. But it is what it is. You also lose one of your bye weeks. We didn't talk about that enough because you have the 9-game SEC schedule. Considering how Texas performed out of bye weeks last season, maybe that's a good thing. So we'll take that. I agree with Jerry, though. You got 2 bowl teams, basically, Texas State and UTSA. You're throwing out there and playing, right? These are 2 teams that good coaches. I mean, I like G.J. Kinney. Everybody talks about Traylor being surprised he stayed there that long because he's such a good coach. So that's Jerry's right. Just overall a tougher schedule. He also brought up the new coaches you're going to play, and that's because of so much turnover. You're playing new coaches. I like to look at that new coach, new quarterback dynamic. Texas will play a lot of new quarterbacks too. Ohio State, you'll get same quarterback, same coach, but for the most part, the rest of that SEC, that usually maybe A&M. We'll have the same quarterback and same head coach, but Arkansas is probably going to have a new one. LSU going to be new. Mississippi State, Ole Miss, who knows what's going to happen there. Florida, you got a new head coach who knows what's going to happen with the quarterback there. So I do think that actually is something that's favorable, that you'll have new quarterbacks in new systems for the most part. What really hurt Texas this year a little bit was that you had quarterbacks who had been in the same system for a long time. You had Pavia, guys like Taylor Green. You were going against quarterbacks who had been in that system for a long time, so they knew all the cheat codes. They knew kind of all the fail safes within those systems. An advantage for Texas in this schedule, you won't have such veteran quarterbacks, and also quarterbacks who are so intimately knowledgeable about the systems they're in. That could help. Also, man, I got to look at what Texas is. Also, the night games they're going to have. I feel like they're going to have a lot of night games in this.
Yes.
Right? Am I wrong? I mean, LSU. I feel like at LSU, at A&M, at Tennessee. I feel like, and the coaches talk a lot about, the road environments in the SEC. They're all, obviously going to be, something that can be very hostile. But the night games, I think I've heard most SEC coaches talk about those are the environments where, teams play out of their minds. You get teams playing the best version of themselves in those night games. And I feel like with the Manning tour, as Jerry brought up, you're going to get night games. I just feel like Tennessee, I feel like LSU, I feel like A&M. I feel like all could be road night games for Texas.
Jerry, I'll go back to you. You were pointing out, you were talking about where the bye weeks fall. We know the Texas bye week falls early, and then you've got to run that gauntlet with no break because you lose the second bye week. But Jerry, you were pointing out something that I thought was interesting, where other teams have their bye weeks. Where's Oklahoma's bye week before they play Texas? A&M's bye week, Florida's bye week, some of the bigger games on this schedule. It's interesting, Jerry, how all that works out.
Yeah, so obviously Bobby mentioned it. Texas, I believe he mentioned it. Texas OU both have the off week before the Texas OU game, which makes sense. And that's actually really good for Georgia, or really good for Oklahoma, because they play at Georgia before their off week. They already have two road games, at Michigan and at Georgia. And I don't know what Michigan's going to look like. Hell, I don't think anybody does. But that's still two road game against talented opponents before Texas. So that's a good off week for Oklahoma. I agree with Rod. I wish Texas off week was a little later. But you look at Florida the week after Oklahoma. Florida does not have their off week till after Texas, which means they play 6 games in a row to start the season before Texas. So physically, they could be a little more beat up. And I know their schedule's not as tough at the front half like it used to be. They have FAU, Campbell, but then they Auburn, Ole Miss, at Missouri, South Carolina. So, they literally have 4 SEC games before they ever play Texas, before their off week. So that's a pretty tough schedule for Florida. And then, look, you go down the list. Bama, LSU plays Bama at home, then Texas at home. That's quite the 2-game home stretch for LSU.
Same with A&M. A&M's got Oklahoma and Texas back to back before playing the Longhorns. My thought on this, and just looking at it, talking about this schedule and how it's how there's different pieces to it, Jeff. One thing I wanted to mention with Tennessee, and they are the first SEC game, and it is on the road. And I agree with Rod. I think it's going to be a night game.
Yeah,
sets up entirely as a night game. They'll be playing Jim Knowles, the defensive coordinator, just got hired, and people need to remember this: that the SEC does not play a lot of 3 high safety looks. Jim Knowles kind of perfected that, or started that at Oklahoma State, and kind of flummoxed historically Steve Sarkisian. Now he took it to Ohio State last year, national semifinals. Texas only scored 14 points. Now he's coming back, and he'll be the defensive coordinator at Tennessee. So I think that could be an interesting game early. And the reason why is you won't have seen Jim Knowles in conference play other SEC teams and how they attack, and except for Texas. Texas is the guinea pig, and it's on the road and probably at night.
Yeah,
that's one thing that sticks out to me about this schedule.
Love that point about. I'll say the saving grace could be, because I agree with you 100%. Sark hadn't beaten Jim Knowles actually, so he does have issues with the 3 high, and Jim Knowles has his system matches up well with what Sark does. The one saving grace for Texas might be that it does take a while for him to implement that system, right? It's very detailed oriented. It's very unique and specific. There's not a ton that translates from a lot of other systems with Jim Knowles. It's like, no, it's very specific. So hopefully, because it's so early, they're having trouble with guys implementing the system and being comfortable in the system and being knowledgeable with it. Hopefully it's the bare bones, like the most basic rudimentary system from Jim Knowles, not the intricate, kind of thorough, very deep dive stuff that he does against them at Ohio State with those types of athletes, and at Oklahoma State when he had been there for a little while. So I agree with you. That's not a good look. I don't like that. I don't like that.
But you think the timing of it is actually probably beneficial?
Because think about when he faced Target Oklahoma State, he had been there for a while. System was already implemented. They were already one of the best defenses in the country. Ohio State had the best access to the best athletes that his system's ever seen. And he had already kind of been there for a while to implement it and get guys, get guys accustomed to it and guys knowledgeable with the details of it. He doesn't have that really at Tennessee. So hopefully that means since Sark's familiar with it, it won't be new to Sark. This will be, like I said, the most basic rudimentary form of that Jim Knowles defense, not the more sophisticated version that Sark has seen.
I'm buying that. I hear you. I agree with you on that.
Hopefully. I said hopefully, Bob. Hopefully.
I got a question that's a little outside the SEC schedule, but it's part of the Texas schedule. Since Texas is the host team this year for Ohio State game, what are the chances that's a night game?
Oh, it's because it's going to be an ABC game.
It's ABC. So, I think there's a high probability that ends up being a night. Well, that'll piss off Ohio State fans, but oh well. But I think that could be one big feather for Texas against Ohio State. I think there's a high probability that's a night game this year.
Man, you could get 4 or 5 night games today. That would be crazy this season. That definitely would be the most, right? There's no way they've had that many night games, right? Maybe 08. I think they played a lot of night. I feel like 08, night games.
Yeah.
Because I know how good all the teams were in the Big 12, right?
Yeah.
And plus, Colt McCoy was just on fire. I agree. The thing that I also want to mention with this schedule, if you allow me, Jeff, the way they've set up Arkansas, OU, and A&M now on the schedule is more natural. The last 2 years, the first 2 years in the SEC, Texas has played both Arkansas and A&M either at home, like they did this year, or on the road. By replacing Arkansas in Austin this year and Texas traveling to A&M, I think that now they've got it on a more natural schedule of one of all the rivals, the historical rivals. Arkansas will be one direction, A&M the other, and then Oklahoma will be neutral.
Yeah, agree.
And that sets it up from here to eons from now.
Yeah.
If they stay in the same conference and the same kind of scheduling, that'll be more even-handed, which I think is great. And it used to be that way. It needs to stay that way as we move forward, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Guys, when you look at the toughest stretch of the schedule, we look at the 25 schedule, and we knew, hey, October was going to be tough just by managing the time away from home. And Jerry, I'll start with you. I looked at that November schedule, and it's not necessarily those are the toughest teams you're going to play, but you're at Missouri, at LSU, you come back home for Arkansas on Senior Day, and then you're at Kyle Field to end the regular season. Those are 3, and 2 of those are most likely going to be night games, as we talked about.
Yeah.
That's 3 pretty brutal trips in a 4-game stretch to end your regular season.
Easily the toughest stretch. And it really does make Arkansas a trap game at the end of the year, depending on how much is on the line. Because you play at LSU, then you come home for Arkansas, then you go to A&M. It makes Arkansas very trappy to me because these kids don't grow up hating Arkansas like the fan base does, right? So it's a little different, but that's easily the toughest 4-game stretch because the 3 road games late in the year. And by the way, that's 3 road games after an early bye week. So you played Oklahoma, Florida, Ole Miss, and Mississippi State. So those are games 5 and 6 in a row at Missouri and at LSU on the road before Arkansas and then A&M. So I think that's easily the toughest stretch. And I think when we start looking at this right now, depending on if the playoffs stays at 12 or if it goes to 14 or 16 next year, the reality for Texas is they need to have 1 loss on the season after the Missouri game. They need to be sitting there with 1 loss because at LSU and at A&M, and out Arkansas, so you have a little bit margin for error. They need to be a one-loss team after the trip to Missouri.
Bobby, any thoughts on the toughest portion of the schedule?
Oh, I think it's to Jerry's point. I think the back end is loaded. 3 away games. I will say that the first 5 is no picnic. It's out of the gate. Rod mentioned it. You don't just have Ohio State. You have 2 bowl teams in UTSA and Texas State, and then you wait, and then you go on the road to Tennessee, and then you come back and play the the OU game in Dallas. I mean, the first 5 are no picnic, and so that middle grouping may be thought to be a little bit easier, depending on what Ole Miss really looks like subsequent to Lane Kiffin leaving. Are they going to keep their ability on offense? Probably not, to be frank, right? So then you have Mississippi State on Halloween. That's going to be one of the focal points of this season. I think it'd be great. I know it won't be a ABC primetime game, most likely, right? But you hope it's like that 6:30 start on ESPN, so you get Halloween at DKR. That could be
cool.
Imagine the light show that Bill Conte, Drew Martin, and those guys can create.
That'd be cool.
Yeah. So we'll see, but I think that the back end is certainly the one that's going to tail the tail of the season. I think the front end, though, is kind of a little bit tougher than maybe what you want, especially in a situation where you have that 9th SEC game and you have another team on the road that's, Tennessee is your first SEC conference game. It's going to be tough.
Yep.
By the way, that Mississippi State going into the Texas game, you want to talk about a tough 3-game stretch? At LSU, Oklahoma, and at Texas.
Woo! Jeff Labby, yeah, you're on notice, buddy.
And his quarterback's going to be really good, but he's going to have to be really good 3 weeks in a row.
No doubt.
As a first-year starter.
And healthy.
Yeah.
Because he's a runner first at some level.
Yeah.
We'll finish this up here in just a minute, Rob. We'll get to your thoughts here in just a minute. But Bobby, real quick, let's go ahead and thank our sponsor for this edition of On Texas Football. That's our friends over at Von Lane.
Yeah, absolutely. We love Von Lane. Use it ourselves. As the holidays draw near, travel season is officially here. But it doesn't have to be stressful. If you're heading to Austin or another major Texas city for Christmas or New Year's, Von Lane makes getting there easy. You'll board in minutes at a hotel terminal located just minutes from your final destination and settle into one of just 22 oversized seats. More space, more comfort, no crowds. Enjoy Wi-Fi, snacks, beverages, and hot towel service on every trip. And on select routes, savor complimentary meal service delivered right to your seat. Von Lane takes the grind out of regional travel so you can focus on what really matters, the people and experiences that await you. Book today at vonlane.com and use code OTF25 for $20 off your first ride. Again, don't let the holidays be stressful, and holiday travel especially. Von Lane, your private jet on wheels, now serving Austin, Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, Fort Worth, Plano, the Woodlands, even in the Southeast, Nashville, Memphis, Atlanta, and Knoxville. Von Lane, your private jet on wheels.
All right. Thank you, Bobby. Rod, the floor is yours, sir.
About that last stretch, I mean, there's no doubt it's going to be the stretch that defines the season. I think it'll be that way for a lot of teams. One of the things that could help Texas on that stretch, where they had to play 3 out of 4 games on the road. I do think you're going to go against some good coaches. I think the Arkansas coach, Ryan Silver, feels a little underrated. Guy's got some NFL background, like 7 years in the league. Guy's only 45 years old. But like I said, it'll be for Texas. I do think ultimately it'll be about health, man. How healthy can, knock on wood, right? For anybody, how healthy can you be down the stretch there? Because everybody's going to get banged up. You got a tougher schedule. You got more SEC games, fewer bye weeks as well. So health is going to be huge down the stretch, but that'll be the case for everybody. But I do think Texas, by that time, you're hoping you're playing your best brand of football by that stretch too. So you should, at key positions, you have some of the best players in the country. Hopefully they're playing their best football. You're going to need it around that time. I do like I said, that Texas doesn't have to play a lot of quarterbacks who are coming back. But we'll see. Bo Prabilla, he's a senior, I believe, too, from Missouri. So he's going to be gone. Taylor Green for Arkansas on the stretch, he's going to be gone. A&M, I believe, is the only one's going to be bringing that quarterback back with a head coach. So I think that stretch, although it looks really tough, it could be something that, I think Texas could come out of on top 3-1 out of that stretch if, like I said, they're healthy down the last stretch of the season.
The only
team that close it, Rod. Got to beat A&M in College Station to close it.
All right, guys, as we wind this down, Jerry, I'll start with you. The only other things I can think of is figuring out where the trap game might be. Bobby, I think you mentioned Arkansas a little bit ago. That's probably the obvious place I think people would look. Any other place, Jerry, where you see a trap game? And what does this do? Is this the SEC going to the 9-game schedule? Do you force the committee's hand to take strength of schedule into consideration? Because there are going to be a couple of really, really dang good football teams that finish 9-3 after these schedules.
Yeah, look, I mean, the reality is you emotionally can't get up for every game. It's human nature. It's not going to happen, right? So you look at Mississippi State or Missouri or Arkansas. Those are the 3 games you really look at. Because, look, after Oklahoma is Florida and Austin. After the game last year, that I'm not worried about that even after Oklahoma. Ole Miss, you get that Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Missouri stretch. There's going to be one of those games where you're not emotionally up for that game like you are for others. It's human nature. It's going to happen. At Missouri is one that I look at because, look, it's not one of the storied SEC programs. Obviously, you used to play them in the Big 12, but the kids on these teams don't know that these days. They don't know anything about that. But so at Missouri is one for me because it's right. It's after the home stretch, and then it's right before at LSU. That's the game that you have to be emotionally higher for than you normally would be because Eli Drinkwitz is a really good offensive coach. They've done a great job in the portal. I'll be interested to see if Damon Wilson, their edge, is wearing a Georgia helmet playing for Missouri next year because he's now under a lawsuit. He might have to play technically for both.
Bobby, as you get to your final thoughts, I saw this pop up. I've seen it pop up a couple times already. Hey, could this Texas team, in theory, put a better product on the field, a more consistent product, and still finish 9-3?
I think. Look, we said that this past year. I think that Texas could be a better team and still end up with a worse record. And I actually think this Texas team ended up being a better team late in the regular season than last year's team. There's an argument for that. I really do believe that. I would say this, with the 9-game SEC schedule, with the Ohio State game, I don't necessarily think your record is going to indicate how good a team you are. Everybody will say, "Oh, yes, it does," but look, this Texas team, what was the Vegas thing? The one that ended this year, only 3 teams they would be underdogs to in this college football playoff, like true underdogs. Mm-hmm. I think they finished pretty strong. I think this team in 2026, depending on how well they do in the portal, and that is going to be huge over the next 2 to 3 weeks or even month, is how well does Texas do in the portal. If Texas does what I think that they can do, this could be a better team and still be 9-3, Jeff. I do believe that. However, if they get to 16-team playoffs, I think Texas would be in at 9-3 compared to what happened to them this year. And I also want to add this. You mentioned I thought Arkansas might be a trap game for Texas. I really don't think Arkansas is the trap game. If I were to choose one, it would be Mississippi State. And Jeff Levy's going to be coaching for his job. Texas came back in overtime against them last year. They're going to be thinking that they're due some revenge. That would be my trap game right now over Missouri away. That one would be my pick.
And I'll say the other thing before Rod on trap games. Let's see how much this Texas team learned from this season to next season.
Yeah.
The Tennessee game you're talking about.
Well, yeah. I mean, just in general. I mean, there were too many times where you kind of said, this doesn't look right. This doesn't look good. And on next year's schedule, let's see if they've grown up from that, because you can't have that next year.
The scary thing is, speaking of growth, like the team grew up on that long road trip, right? That's when we actually saw them grow up. They faced adversity. They learned how to win in different ways. It brought them closer together as a team. It really did. And actually, there were some solutions that the coaches figured out offensively all right, through going through that adversity, right, battling on the road like that. But that home stretch this year, it doesn't give that new team that opportunity. Like, they got to find those areas of growth elsewhere, because that's what we really, I think, witnessed when they had that long road trip. And I thought they came back a more mature team, a better team when they came back home. So this team, I don't know when that growth is going to happen. Hopefully, like you said, Jerry, because they avoided San Jose State and, whoever else, the Sisters of the Poor, that maybe they'll be challenged a little bit more early on in the season, and you won't have to have that disastrous Florida game where you really kind of hit rock bottom and then had to kind of climb your way out on that road trip. And then once you found who you were through facing that adversity, they had an identity as a team. But unfortunately, you do have to face adversity, and they didn't win that Florida game in face of that adversity, and that's what kept them from the playoffs. But like Bobby said, they were a much better team toward the end. I don't know where that stretch is for this team. I'm just throwing it out.
Yep. Yeah. It's part of growing as a team and learning to play. That's my theme with 26. Can you play better on the road in 26 than you did in 25? Because all of your unsatisfactory games, even Kentucky and Mississippi State, those games were on the road. The 3 games you lost were true road games. Rod, any of the final thoughts? And then Bobby, Jerry, you guys chime in with any final thoughts you have on this.
No, I mean, I love this exercise, break it down. It seems with all the turnover, though, in college football, we're talking about the transfer portal and coaching changes, not just head coaches, but coordinators. A lot of these teams got new coordinators, too. On defense and offense, we haven't broken that down. It'd taken us an hour to break that down, and that's going to be the case, too. So oftentimes, you really just don't know how good a team is going to be and how a team is going to handle the toughest stretches of their schedule, because we don't really know how they're going to look. Right now, I'd say we probably got a 30% view of most of these teams and how they're going to look when it's all said and done after the transfer portal and everything, especially when you come to the toughest part of the schedule, which is on the road through injuries and everything else that's going to occur and how the coaches are going to adapt to it. So it's fascinating, but it seems like sometimes it's an exercise in futility.
I got a question for all 3 of you guys. Is Ohio State a must-win game?
For Sark, it is.
Yeah, for Sark it is. But I don't think so. I mean, I think that I'd love to see a win, obviously, but I don't think it's a must-win game. My final thought on the schedule is this. I mean, season tickets. You got a pretty good schedule right now. You got 2 local teams, right, in UTSA and Texas State, just down the I-35 corridor, right? So that's going to be a little bit of a hot ticket, even though that they're less considered group of 5 teams. Mm-hmm. Ohio State, that's going to command premium price. Then they come back with Florida. That's they travel, big time team. And then you have the 2 Mississippi teams, finish with Arkansas. This is a far cry from the days of the Big 12.
Yeah.
I'll just put it that way for home scheduling. Pretty strong home schedule overall.
Yeah. My only thing with the home schedule, let's hope that construction on MLK gets wrapped up by the time the season starts. That's all I'll say.
I'll say this. I do think Ohio State's a must-win game because of the SEC schedule. They got to get it done.
Yeah, I'm with you, Jerry, but I'm with it for the reasons that Bobby and Rod mentioned. I think for Sark, you take a 3rd loss to Ryan Day in however many months that is.
They'll probably be a top 5 team. So versus top 5 teams, you need to win one. You only got 1 win versus top 5 team.
And by the way, that's an Ohio State team that is going to return Julian Sayin and Jeremiah Smith. So
they might be defending champs. 2 times. They might be 2-time defending champs.
By the time the playoff is said and done. All right, guys, that is going to do it for this look at the 2026 football schedule. Jerry, Bobby, Rod, thank you guys so much for the knowledge and expertise as always. Thank you to Matthew behind the scenes for producing it. Thank you to our friends over at Von Lane for sponsoring it. Just a reminder that if you're not a member over at ontexasfootball.com, you can get over to the site right now and sign up using the promo code OTFOG, and that'll get you 1 year of access at ontexasfootball.com for just $39.95. Make sure that you like this video and that you're subscribed to the On Texas Football YouTube channel. That way, whether it's here on the channel or on the site, you're not missing any of our Longhorn coverage all year round. For Jerry, for Bobby, for Rod, for Matthew, for the entire On Texas Football staff, I'm Jeff Howe. Thank you so much for watching and listening. And until next time, hook 'em.
Hook 'em horse.